Tonight, we are entering a calm and steady part of ancient Greek history, focused not on gods who traveled, argued, or fought, but on the quiet presence of Hestia, the goddess of the hearth and the home. This is a restful exploration of ordinary domestic life, shaped by routine, warmth, and familiarity rather than action or change. You do not need to remember stories or symbols, and you do not need to stay awake for this history. Hestia's role in ancient Greek life was constant and unobtrusive, centered around the hearth fire that burned steadily within homes and communal spaces. The hearth was not dramatic or decorative, but practical, providing warmth, light, and a place to prepare food. It remained in the same location day after day, anchoring the household in physical space and routine. Families gathered near it naturally, not for ceremony, but because daily tasks required its presence. Food was cooked slowly, tools were warmed or dried nearby, and evenings settled quietly around its glow. The fire was tended with care, maintained rather than admired, and its continuity offered reassurance that the household remained stable. Hestia was honored not through large temples or festivals, but through this ongoing attention to the hearth itself. In this way, her presence blended seamlessly into everyday life, reflected in routine actions repeated without thought, as the quiet rhythm of the ancient Greek home continued steadily, without urgency and without a clear beginning or end. As life continued within the ancient Greek home, the hearth remained at the center of daily routine, quietly shaping the flow of each day without drawing attention to itself. From morning until evening, the fire was tended carefully, adjusted as needed to provide warmth, light, or heat for cooking. Small tasks gathered naturally around it, with family members moving in familiar patterns that changed little over time. Food preparation followed the same sequence each day, beginning with simple ingredients and ending with modest meals shared without ceremony. Tools and household items were kept nearby, dried or warmed by the fire before being returned to their usual places. The rhythm of work was slow and predictable, guided by necessity rather than preference. Children grew accustomed to the presence of the hearth early in life, learning its importance not through instruction, but through observation and repetition. The fire was never allowed to burn unattended for long, as its steady presence symbolized continuity and care within the household. Hestia's role in these routines was subtle and constant, reflected in the quiet maintenance of the hearth rather than in spoken prayer. Through this steady attention, daily life moved forward calmly, anchored by the familiar warmth of the fire, as the household continued in the same measured and unhurried way. As daylight gradually faded in the ancient Greek home, activity slowed naturally, guided by the soft glow of the hearth rather than by any formal signal. Evening brought a gentle reduction in movement, as tasks that required daylight were set aside and attention shifted toward rest and quiet presence. The fire was adjusted once more, lowered to provide warmth without excess, and its steady light softened the space around it. Family members gathered nearby without urgency, completing small tasks or simply sitting in stillness as the day came to a close. Conversations, if they occurred at all, were brief and practical, often focused on simple matters that required no extended thought. Meals in the evening were modest and familiar, prepared using the same methods and ingredients as before, reinforcing a sense of continuity rather than change. After eating, utensils were cleaned and returned to their places, and the household settled further into calm. The hearth remained lit through the night, watched carefully to ensure its safety and stability. Hestia's presence during these hours was quiet and reassuring, reflected in the ordered closing of the day, rather than in any spoken acknowledgement. As night deepened, the household rested within the steady rhythm it had followed so many times before, allowing routine to carry life forward gently, without urgency and without a clear endpoint. Within the ancient Greek home, the presence of the hearth shaped not only routine, but also the way space was used and understood, creating an environment defined by familiarity and order. Household members moved through rooms in predictable patterns, guided by habit rather than choice, as the layout of the home encouraged closeness to the central fire. Sounds were soft and repetitive, the gentle crackle of burning wood, the quiet movement of tools, and the occasional shift of someone settling nearby. These sounds blended into the background, becoming part of the home's steady atmosphere rather than sources of attention. Objects were returned to the same places after use, reinforcing consistency and reducing the need for thought or decision. The shared space around the hearth served multiple purposes without changing its character, supporting work, rest, and quiet presence equally. Visitors, when they arrived, naturally gathered near the fire, following the same unspoken understanding as those who lived there. Hestia's influence remained subtle, reflected in the way the household maintained order without effort or instruction. Through repeated use and gentle care, the home remained stable and predictable, allowing daily life to continue calmly, shaped by routine, familiarity, and the quiet reassurance of continuity. As days passed within the ancient Greek household, much of life under the steady presence of Hestia involved quiet care and simple maintenance that ensured the home remained functional and calm. Ashes from the hearth were cleared carefully and regularly, making space for fresh fuel while preserving the fire's steady warmth. Wood was gathered, dried, and stacked nearby in familiar arrangements, allowing it to be added gradually as needed rather than all at once. Surfaces around the hearth were cleaned without haste, and small repairs were made when signs of wear appeared, preventing larger disruptions later. These tasks were repeated so often that they required little thoughts, becoming part of the background rhythm of daily life. Household members learned to recognize when attention was needed simply by observing subtle changes, such as the way smoke moved or how heat filled the room. Hestia's role in these moments was understood through the act of care itself, as maintaining the hearth meant maintaining stability. Through this steady attention, the home continued to function smoothly, supported by routine actions repeated day after day, allowing life to proceed quietly, without urgency, and without any sense of finality. Over time, life within the ancient Greek home continued through generations, with routines shaped by Hestia passed along quietly rather than formally taught. Children learn the order of household life simply by being present, watching adults tend the hearth, prepare food, and care for shared space. No instructions were needed, as repetition provided all the guidance required. As children grew older, they gradually took on small tasks, adding wood to the fire, sweeping ash, or preparing simple ingredients, performing each action in the same manner they had seen countless times before. These responsibilities expanded slowly, matching experience rather than age, allowing confidence to develop without pressure. Elders remained close to the hearth as well, resting nearby and maintaining awareness of the household's rhythm. In this way, knowledge moved steadily from one generation to the next without interruption or ceremony. The hearth remained constant through these changes, serving as a familiar center around which life continued to unfold. Hestia's presence was reflected in this continuity as routines persisted even as individuals changed. Through observation, repetition, and quiet participation, household life carried forward calmly, guided by habit, stability, and the enduring rhythm of everyday routine. Beyond the private household, the influence of Hestia extended into shared community spaces, where hearths served a similar purpose on a larger scale. offering warmth, stability, and a sense of continuity. In these communal settings, the fire was tended with the same care as in the home, maintained steadily rather than allowed to burn brightly. People gathered nearby for practical reasons, warming themselves, preparing simple food, or pausing briefly during the course of daily work. These gatherings were unremarkable and familiar, shaped by routine rather than intention. The shared hearth created a quiet sense of belonging as individuals moved in and out of the space without ceremony or announcement. Responsibilities for maintaining the fire were understood collectively, with small tasks performed as needed rather than assigned. Conversation remained minimal and functional, allowing the presence of others to be felt without demanding attention. Hestia's role in these spaces was subtle, reflected in the calm order and predictability that the hearth supported. Through repeated use and gentle care, community hearths became stable points within daily life, reinforcing a shared rhythm that connected households together, allowing life to continue steadily and without interruption. As seasons shifted throughout the year, the ancient Greek home adjusted gradually, yet the hearth remained a steady and familiar presence regardless of external change. During cooler months, the fire burned longer and provided warmth that drew household members closer together, while in warmer periods it was kept smaller, serving primarily for cooking and light. These adjustments were made naturally, guided by experience rather than instruction, and repeated each year in the same way. Seasonal foods were prepared near the hearth as they became available, reinforcing the connection between the home and the land beyond it. Even as daylight hours lengthened or shortened, the hearth continued to mark the center of domestic life, offering continuity as the environment changed slowly outside. Clothing was dried, tools were warmed, and meals were prepared with the same quiet attention regardless of season. Hestia's influence during these transitions was subtle and reassuring, reflected in the hearth's ability to remain useful and familiar throughout the year. In this way, seasonal change did not disrupt household rhythm, but flowed gently around it, allowing daily life to continue steadily, anchored by routine, repetition, and the enduring presence of the hearth. As daily life continued under the quiet presence of Hestia, long stretches of time passed without noticeable change, marked more by stillness than by action. Hours moved gently within the home, filled with small, familiar sounds that required no attention, such as the soft settling of ash or the faint movement of air near the hearth. Household members occupied themselves with simple tasks or rested nearby, allowing moments of silence to stretch comfortably without the need to be filled. There was no expectation that each day should feel different from the last, as repetition itself provided reassurance. The hearth remained steady during these periods, neither demanding care nor drawing focus, simply existing as it always had. Even when nothing was actively being done, its presence shaped the space, offering warmth and quiet stability. Thoughts slowed naturally in this environment, guided by the absence of urgency and the predictability of routine. Hestia's influence was felt most clearly during these unremarkable hours, when nothing needed to happen and nothing was expected to change. Time moved forward without notice, carried gently by habit and familiarity, as the household remained at rest within the same calm rhythm it had followed for so long. As time moved forward within the ancient Greek home, the hearth increasingly became part of the background of daily awareness, present but rarely noticed, much like the steady passing of hours. Its warmth filled the space evenly, requiring only occasional attention to remain useful, and this predictability allowed household members to move through their routines without interruption. Tasks were performed near the fire simply because that was where they had always been done, not because of deliberate choice. Tools rested where they were last placed, food was prepared in the same sequence as before, and moments of rest occurred naturally when activity slowed. The hearth did not command focus, but supported everything quietly, offering a sense of ease that came from long familiarity. Even when the household was quiet, with little movement or sound, the presence of the fire continued to shape the space gently. Hestia's influence during these moments was subtle and constant, reflected in the way daily life required little effort to maintain order. Through repetition and habit, the home remained stable, allowing time to pass without distinction, as routine carried life forward calmly, without urgency, and without any clear point of transition. As night settled fully over the ancient Greek home, the hearth continued to provide a steady point of warmth and light, requiring only gentle awareness rather than constant attention. Someone in the household remained loosely aware of the fire, not through vigilance, but through familiarity, adjusting it when necessary with small, practiced movements. Shadows moved softly across the walls as the flames shifted, creating patterns that were familiar and unremarkable. Sleep came gradually, without ceremony, as household members rested nearby, confident that the hearth would remain stable through the night. The fire was neither large nor bright, but carefully maintained to last until morning, reflecting the same balance that guided daily life. Outside sounds were muted, and the interior space remained calm and undisturbed. Hestia's presence during these hours was quiet and reassuring, reflected in the sense that nothing needed to change and nothing required immediate action. Time passed gently, marked only by the slow burning of fuel and the steady warmth it released. In this stillness, the home remained secure and familiar, allowing rest to deepen naturally as the night continued onward, held within the same calm rhythm that had shaped the day. As night gradually gave way to morning, the ancient Greek home shifted gently from rest back into quiet activity, guided once again by the steady presence of the hearth. The fire, still warm from the night before, was stirred carefully rather than rebuilt, preserving continuity rather than marking a new beginning. Household members rose without urgency, resuming familiar movements that required little thought or decision. Small adjustments were made to the fire to prepare it for cooking and warmth, repeating actions that had been performed countless times before. Morning tasks followed the same order as always, with food prepared slowly and tools gathered from their usual places. Light entered the home gradually, changing the appearance of the space without altering its function. The hearth remained central, anchoring the transition from night to day without drawing attention to itself. Hestia's influence was present in this smooth return to routine, reflected in the ease with which daily life resumed. There was no clear separation between rest and work, only a gentle shift guided by habit. As the morning settled in, the household continued forward calmly, supported by the same steady rhythm that had carried it through the night, ready to repeat the familiar cycle once again. As life within the ancient Greek home continued, the presence of the hearth remained steady and unchanged, offering reassurance through familiarity rather than attention. Days followed nights, and nights followed days, each shaped by the same gentle routines that required little effort to maintain. The fire continued to burn softly, tended when needed and left undisturbed when not, supporting daily tasks without demanding focus. Household members moved through their roles naturally, guided by habit rather than instruction, as the home functioned smoothly through repetition alone. Nothing marked a final moment or a turning point, because the value of the hearth lay in its ability to remain constant. Hestia's influence persisted quietly, reflected in the ongoing order and calm that shaped each ordinary day. Life did not rush forward or come to a conclusion, but continued evenly, sustained by the steady rhythm of routine and the quiet care that held the home together. In the end, there is no true ending to the story of Hestia, only a gentle settling into stillness and familiarity. The hearth continues to glow softly, the home remains quiet and secure, and daily life flows onward without urgency or change. The warmth of the fire fills the space evenly, offering comfort without drawing attention, just as it always has. Tasks no longer need to be named or followed, as routine carries them forward on its own. You can imagine the home resting now, held within the same calm rhythm that has guided it through countless days and nights. Nothing more needs to happen, and nothing needs to be remembered. Like the steady warmth of the hearth itself, the story can fade quietly, allowing thoughts to slow, awareness to soften, and rest to arrive naturally, surrounded by silence, familiarity, and ease.